Welcome back. The International Finance Corporation has released reform options in 4 areas to boost productivity in Nigeria. And these reforms include policy, transparency and predictability, input quality and availability, reduced regulatory discretion and access to finance. According to the IFC's country manager in Nigeria, Emi Law, access to finance is a key piece of the reform puzzle for Nigeria. To take a listen.
One, evaluating the effectiveness of development finance interventions and import substitution policies. Key thing to address under that one. Also, the perennial discussion around unification of the exchange rate into a single window. That remains an objective that I know the government also is pursuing as well, but still has eluded us for quite some time. And then also strengthening the banking resolution framework. Those are just a few that I think come under that bucket. The second one, domestic revenue mobilization and expenditure quality, key one as well. We've seen in the last couple of years quite a bit of progress in that regard, at least efforts on the part of government to move it forward, but not as much as we'd like to see in terms of results. A key one there is going to be increasing non-oil revenue through comprehensive tax policy and administration reforms. I always like it when people have the debate around why Nigerians don't pay taxes, how we can get Nigerians to pay more taxes. This goes back to the question of the broken social contract that desperately needs fixing in order to move this agenda forward. I think we all know that Nigeria is in the lowest ranks with respect to revenue as a percentage of GDP, although there's been some small improvement recently. And then under the third bucket, under policy, transparency, and predictability, we have trade policy. And there, I'd say top of mind for us is phasing out foreign exchange restrictions and import prohibitions. Not because we think that some of these things are bad things, but simply because they tend to be done in a way that isn't consistent with a longer-term objective. So they're done maybe as a knee-jerk reaction rather than a part of a holistic plan to move a sector forward, to increase, for example, a domestic capacity for manufacturing. The last piece of the puzzle is access to finance. It is a key piece of the reform puzzle for Nigeria. And actually, I think that access to finance starts to fall into place when you get the other pieces right as well. When they're in position, access to finance tends to solve itself. For us, when we think about access to finance, we think about financial deepening and inclusion. That's critical for us. And again, you have a laundry list of things to do to make that happen. A number of them, again, will be low-hanging fruit. Easy things to do that don't take an incredible amount of political will to get it done. It just takes a bit of persistence to move it over the finish line. For example, now actually applying the guidelines for the licensing of the payment service banks to allow for mobile money in Nigeria, enhancing the legal framework for debt resolution and foreclosure. We've seen some moves there in Lagos State. Other states are trying to follow suit, but much more needs to be done there because that then would increase the banking sector's willingness to lend to SMEs. Consolidation in the microfinance sector as well. We've seen that as something that, again, low-hanging fruit that can happen. Also enacting the data protection bill. Again, a long list of things that can be done with a bit of political will, but not taking so much political will that would really move the needle. You put all these 4 things together, the puzzle comes together, and we believe that they can now work in concert. Again, we could have a long conversation about some of the key things that you think are important that should be here, and maybe in the panels that will follow a bit later, we will unearth some of those things. My sense is that if we throw 300 things out there and try and get 300 things done, we won't succeed. There's a real necessity to prioritize and to sequence and just to bite off what we can chew. So my sense is that it's really important to focus on a few key things as a first step. And that would be aligning the private sector around that and then the government around that as well. So that focuses again on the reform piece where government is critical to get these things done. Again, we all know what some of these things are. We don't need to debate them for a long time, but certainly we could have a conversation about what the priorities should be, what happens first, what happens second. But there's broad agreement that these are things that are critical for the reform agenda going forward. Again, that's now what government should do.
Moving on now, the U.S. and Kenya are expected to announce negotiations on the free trade agreement next week, and that will be America's first such deal with a sub-Saharan country. An announcement on the discussion will coincide with Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta's visit to Washington next week. Kenya's Principal Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Macharia Kamau, says the nations expect real progress on an agreement by the third quarter of this year, depending on how the negotiations go. Kenya is America's 11th largest trading partner on the continent and the 6th biggest in sub-Saharan Africa, with total trade between the two countries at $1.17 billion in 2018. Vodafone Group has struck a preliminary deal to sell its 55% stake in its Egyptian unit to Saudi Arabia's largest telecoms operator, STC, for $2.4 billion. The non-binding deal values Vodafone Egypt at $4.4 billion, and the two companies have agreed over the long term the use of the Vodafone brand and other services in Egypt. The Memorandum of Understanding is valid for 75 days. STC is looking to diversify outside its domestic market, which still makes up more than 90% of revenue. The deal gives it access to a country of over 80 million people, where Vodafone Egypt has a market share of about 44%. Now, it's been close to 3 months since Moody's Investors Service changed its outlook on South Africa's credit ratings to negative, but the global ratings firm says it's still a bit too early to judge the government's policy and structural reforms. Moody's says in a statement that it's looking for signs of credible medium-term vision for South Africa, describing the negative outlook as relatively fresh. The ratings company cut the outlook for South Africa's Baa3 foreign and local currency assessments to negative on November the 1st. Moody's is waiting on the February 26 budget review for details on how the government will contain spending and bolster revenue. Well, let's check out the price of crude oil at the international market. Of course, they're higher today, standing on firmer ground after a 5-day fall on talks that OPEC could extend cuts if the new coronavirus hurts demand. Brent crude rose 0.6% to $59.84 a barrel, while U.S. crude was also up 0.6% at $53.79 a barrel. OPEC wants to extend oil production cuts until at least June from March and may deepen the reductions should demand for oil in China be significantly reduced by the spread of the virus. Data from industry group, the American Petroleum Institute, shows U.S. oil inventories fell last week compared with analyst expectations of a gain of 482,000 barrels. And gold prices were little changed earlier today as investors evaluated the economic impact from the coronavirus outbreak in China and awaited a policy decision from the U.S. Federal Reserve later today. Spot gold was almost unchanged at $1,565.67 an ounce, and U.S. gold futures fell 0.3% to $1,564.60. Among other precious metals, now palladium advanced 0.9% to $2,309.07 an ounce, and platinum rose 0.3% to $988.60. Silver shed 0.1% to $17.42, having dipped to its lowest since December the 23rd at $17.35 earlier in the session. And that's our show today. Thank you for watching. I am Bisi Adebayo.